know threes by heart. You see, first up is 3 times 1, which is 3. That's an easy one, so what's next? Are you ready to start? Well, next you double and it's really no trouble. 3 times 2 makes 6 big bubbles. 3 times 3 is the fact real.
All right, welcome friends. We are on to week 6. It is Monday, May 18th. This week we are focusing on measurement. So we did it metric measurement towards the beginning of the year, and we kind of touched base on some of it, mainly just focusing on base 10 with metric, but we are going to be doing kind of just a review of measurement that you've learned in 3rd grade. I'm sure with inches and feet, that should ring a bell, and we've touched on it briefly, but this week's going to be kind of a more focused in review of it all. And then, of course, you're going to get a problem of the week, and it's going to be based on measurement as well to kind of keep you in that wheelhouse. For Achieve, we finished the Achieves in your packet this far. So the ones that were placed in there and sent to you, we've come to an end. If you didn't finish one, this would be the perfect time for you to go back and finish those up. But if not, I am going to be reading aloud an article that I found really interesting on some girls that are skateboarding in Afghanistan during the war, and it's kind of motivational, and I just thought it was a really interesting article on Achieve that if you don't have online access, it's going to be kind of an option for you to read with me today like you would, and then tomorrow I'll post the questions that go with it just as an alternate option for you. But of course, if you're signing on Achieve, you could do the same article if you would like, or, get creative, have some freedom and find an article that you like and just make sure that it has an activity with it. There's some articles that don't come with activity questions, so just kind of check before you start reading that you're going to have an activity within it. So that means the multiple choice questions, and you're ready to go because it will kind of calculate into your Lexile and get you working towards what you want to. And of course, keeping the same with your reading, and we're on to Harry Potter chapter 15. We're getting towards the end of book 1, so it's getting pretty exciting, guys. And then finally for writing, we're on day 22, and we'll go over that prompt to make sure we're all on the same page.
Well, next you double and it's really no trouble. 3 times 2 makes 6 big bubbles. 3 times 3 is the fact real fine. Multiply and you'll find that the answer's 9. Now 3 times 4.
Today for math, you're going to be going back in your packet, I believe last week with our different types of line and geometry. We were in the 30s, so you're going to be kind of going backwards in your packet to page 25 and finding 4.md.1. And it is going to be on relative size of measurement. So it's kind of going to be this today for the notes. You're going to be getting a bunch of these videos that you've probably seen separately, and the videos are based on all the different types of measurements. So what that means is, if you think of measurement, there's of course the ones that we all know that if we go to a theme park, it's going to say, are you 4 feet tall? Now you can go on the teacups, or you have to be this tall, and they measure you and you can go in. So that's height. That's measurement that we're all kind of used to. There's weight. So that would be pounds, and that's what we use. But of course, then you could be talking about the elephants at the zoo that are tons. So there's different types of measurement, just as with length and size, that it could be feet or inches or centimeters on that ruler. And there's also capacity. So that's going to be when you go to the grocery store and you see a soda bottle and your mom says, hey, grab that 2 liter. 2 liters represents that you're not going to get that small bottle on the bottom shelf. You're going to be going for that big bottle at the top. That's a 2-liter bottle. And that's capacity of what's taken up kind of with a liquid is most often what we see that as. So there's a vast array of different types of measurement, and we're going to be kind of going over them all. Like time is included, which I think often we might not even think about, but I know we all check that clock for snack or check that clock for our bedtime. So we're just going to be going over them all in the notes. And then your job today is then to sit and go through these 8 questions that you see right here and say, which one would I use? Which one of these would I use to measure the amount of time it takes to brush my teeth? Are you going to pull out a ruler to do that? Absolutely not. Are you going to pull out your liter bottle to measure how much time? Absolutely not. So it was overwhelming kind of creating this lesson today for you in this review, because I felt it was so much. I mean, there's probably 4 or 5 songs that go into it, where normally we stick with one. But I do feel like this skill is applicable to your real life, which if you know Miss Princell, she likes the real life application and having you guys realize that the things we're teaching you matter. Because what's better than learning something that matters? And this really does. You don't want to be that person that someone asks, how long is it going to take you to get here? And you go, hold on, and you take out your ruler and think you're going to figure that out. That would be a little embarrassing and people might laugh at you. So Miss Princell is trying to help you and save you in the 4th grade and make sure you understand the different types of measurement we will use for practical things in our life. Hopefully it's going to make a little more sense, but I do want you to know it's going to be a lot. It's going to seem like a bunch of review, but it's not really in depth. It's not a lot of, like division takes a lot of you guys sitting there number by number and following along. It's not as much as that as it's just kind of getting all these ideas and kind of putting them all next to each other and realizing, time is not the same as measuring with a ruler, which we know, but let's review it. So as always, Google Classroom, you can find it on Monday Math. I kind of reorganized the Google Classroom to have just your week assignments at the very, very top. So hopefully that helps, and I'll kind of talk to you guys to see how it goes. And then the No Google Classroom form right here, of course, click and you're on your way. All right, let's get started. So today's focus is I can show that I know the relative size of measurement units within a single system. So what it's asking is I told you that I was going to show you a bunch of videos. You can think of each video kind of showing you one of the systems of measurement, one of the types, whether that's time, whether that's length, whether it's capacity, whether it's weight. We're going to go over each system, and then within those systems, you're going to be able to know, okay, a centimeter is different from an inch. A centimeter is a lot smaller than a foot. You're going to be able to start understanding how each of the sizes within a unit of measurement within a system works. Here we go. Okay, so as I said, videos will begin to play. I'm going to play the video first for you, and then we're going to dive in. So go ahead, and the video will just play for you.
We are the women and men of measurement. If there's a distance, we find the length of it. We know we can always put 12 inches inside a foot, and 1 yard just won't be complete if it does not contain 3 feet.
1 inch is what you got if you're looking at the top of a bottle of pop. On your thumb is about 1 inch from your knuckle to your fingertip.
We are the women and men of measurement. If there's a distance, we find the length of it.
The length of the folder where your work is put measures out to just 1 foot.
You'll find a foot if you look at the height of the parrot on my hook.
Yar. A football field has 100 marks. Each one is a yard apart.
At the plate with a softball bat, a yard is about what you're looking at.
Open your fingers a pinch and make an inch. Then make your hands look just like a foot. Put them 3 times as far and make a yard. Now we know how long they are.
We are the women and men of measurement. If there's a distance, we find the length of it.
A millimeter, you can understand, is about as long as a grain of sand. When you buy food at lunchtime, it's about the thickness of a dime.
A staple from side to side is about a centimeter wide. A fingernail on a girl or guy is about a centimeter high.
10 millimeters, a centimeter, 100 centimeters is a meter, 1,000 meters, that's a kilometer, and it's the same for grams and liters.
A school bus wheel's diameter is about 1 meter, and
Alrighty, so relative sizes of measurement. The first one we're focusing on is linear measurement or length. So it's kind of the ones that we can measure with those rulers like you're used to. So as you can see here, we have metric, which is the one we went over earlier in the year because it's base 10. So it's the one the rest of the world really works on, where in America you hear about inches, foot, and yard. And that's not wrong, that's what we use. But we need to be knowledgeable about both. So the metric system is those words like millimeter, centimeter, meter, kilometer. And you're realizing that a millimeter is very, very small. A centimeter you've had on a ruler that you know it's smaller than an inch. And on here it's about the width of your pinky finger. A meter is the height of a chair. And a kilometer, we went over a lot in my class, you're thinking 6 city blocks. And we went over in that video. Now, customary is the US, and you can see that it says the US. So an inch is about the length of a paper clip, and I have a bunch of examples over here that say a whistle, a paper clip, a knuckle. I know that finger looks funky, but I didn't draw it, so you can laugh at my drawings normally, but that's not my drawing, so be nice. Or a snap cube is the ones that we have in math that you kind of snap the blocks together. So an inch is about a paper clip. A foot is going to be your ruler. 12 inches is 1 foot. And a yard is 3 rulers. And you may have seen in your life a yardstick, which looks like one of those big rulers. But that's because it's a big ruler, because it's 3 rulers put together is 1 yard. Or as it shows you, 36 inches, because 12 times 3 is 36. Okay? So I know that's a lot. You've heard it in song form, you've heard it in a poster form, and we're all just getting used to these. And I can admit, guys, and this might not be the greatest thing to do, but Miss Princell does not know. I could say the length ones I know pretty well. But when we get into capacity and we get into weight and even, I mean, when you start talking pints and quarts, and Miss Princell has to refresh her brain on it. These are not something that you're just supposed to pick up and know, but what you should know is you should not be walking around this earth after this lesson in 4th grade and go, an inch is bigger than a yard. That would be silly, right? Because we know that 3 rulers, which has 12 inches, times 36 inches, if you're saying 36 inches is smaller than 1 inch, that would be a little crazy. It's the same as like a millimeter. You'd want to know that's smaller than a kilometer. So it's not that I want you to memorize these conversions and these ideas that, 36 inches is a yard. Like, yes, those are good things to know, but I think the real focus today that I want you guys to focus on is this knowledge of knowing these words and knowing relatively what they mean. And how we're going to practice that is, if you look over here, we're going to have a word bank going on that has the things that we are going to be putting into this column. So for each kind of system, we are going to be using this box and going through them. You're going to see a red line through it. Once we use it, they're going to be used once. And what it says is it's a unit of measure, so inches. What can we use to measure something? What would be used to measure in inches? In inches, would we measure the distance to school? Would we measure our classroom? Would we measure a crayon? Would we measure a rug? Would we measure a marker? And now, my cynical friends, which Miss Princell is cynical in herself, you could say, well, I could measure my distance to school in inches. Yes, you could. You could sit there with your ruler and you could keep going and going and going and going in inches. But we're not asking if you can do it, because we know, yes, you could. We're asking which would be the most logical answer and what in real life would you use to do this most effectively, most efficiently? What would be the easiest, quickest measurement way to do it? Okay, so we're trying to think logically, not trying to be funny. We're trying to actually think in real life, if we had a timer on us, which one would make the most sense to do. So that being said, let me kind of show you, and I'm hoping after this system, the next we're going to do this for the other 3, so hopefully you'll get to it. So it says inches, units of measure to use. Distance to school, we cross that one out. That would make no sense. Classroom, would I really go and take my ruler and start going 1 inch, 2 inch and measure my whole classroom? That would take forever. A crayon, okay, a crayon next to a ruler, I can picture that in my head, yeah, that makes sense. A rug, well, a rug's kind of big, but I guess I could do it. A marker, Okay. So I kind of come down to going, that's out. Distance to school would be out for me. Classroom out. Rug's too big. I think a Miss Prince's flower rug. I would need a couple friends to help me. A crayon or a marker. Okay. Well, I'm going to do a marker. And why do I say marker? Because a marker's long. It's not as long as a ruler, but it does have probably 2 or 3 or 4 inches in it. So I could use my inches to measure my marker. That would work. Okay, fair. I'm going to cross marker out. Now I'm left with rug, crayon, classroom, and distance to school. Now I'm using feet. And I know feet, well, I think of feet is when I want to ride that ride at the park and it says I'm 4 feet tall. So I know I'm about 4 feet, 7 inches. Miss Prince's like 5'6". Okay, my dad might be 6 foot tall. Okay, so feet are a foot and feet. Are those the same thing? Yeah. Okay, so 1 foot is 12 inches. All right, so I'm thinking of like a ruler's length. What can I use? Well, a crayon smaller than a ruler? Yeah, so that's not going to work. My classroom's big. I don't know if I'd want to just use a ruler to do my classroom. It's better than the inches, but I don't know if it's much better. Distance, way, way, way too long. So I'm going to go with, I think I'll pick rug. Yes. All right. So if you see over here, this example for foot is 1 foot is 12 inches. It's saying your ruler. You could do your elbow to your wrist, your foot. That's a funky looking foot, and a length of a book. All right. So I could use my ruler. I could go down to that flower rug and count how many of my rulers make up the rug. All right, now I'm to centimeters. And centimeter, I think that's small, right? Because on my ruler, there's 2 sides on a ruler. And, oh yeah, I'm right. See, it's like the size of an eraser on my pencil. It's the size of my fingernail. Ooh, that's small. And the size of 1 base unit block. Oh, so 1 of the blocks in a base unit. I was so confused by seeing that base unit rod. All right, so I'm looking at my fingernail. What could I go around and measure with the length of my fingernail? Would I measure the distance to school? Would I put my hand down on the cement and count how many fingers? That would be crazy. That would take all day. Classroom? No, that's way too small. Well, I have a crayon. Is a crayon small? Well, yeah, but I could probably, do like 4 or 5 or 6 of my nails, so that would work. I could see how many centimeters is a crayon. Yep, okay, that makes sense. All right, now I'm left with meters and kilometers. So a meter is 100 centimeters is 1 meter. So that's equal to my shoulder to my fingers. Okay, I can pull out my hand. That's pretty long. Doorknob to the floor. All right. So am I going to use this length from my shoulder to my fingers to measure the distance to school or to measure my classroom? I think by far I would only do the classroom. At least I know that size. The length of all those streets together would be way too long. So I'm going to use classroom, and that leaves me with 1 left, and it's the distance to school. And this makes sense because a kilometer is about 6 city blocks. So if I'm measuring blocks meaning all those little side streets to Feaster, I could measure how many kilometers it is to my school. Distance to school. All right.
Put 16 ounces on a scale. It'll weigh 1 pound without fail. Pick up 16 ounces off the ground, and you've just lifted 1 pound. And if a ball weighs 16 ounces, a pound hits the ground every time it bounces. If you weighed 2,000 pounds, you couldn't run, cause if you weighed that much, you would be 1 ton. But if you found treasure, it would be real fun. If all that gold weighed up to 1 ton, cause all of that would make mounds and mounds, as a ton is equal to 2,000 pounds. I looked up how many ounces were in a pound, and 16 ounces is what I found. Then I stacked up pounds till they weighed a ton, and it took 2,000 until I was done. Lots of things weigh about an ounce,
like 4 quarters.
Or a friendly mouse.
Lots of things weigh about a pound, like this bottle of soda
That my teacher found.
Lots of things weigh about a ton, like a small car.
Driven by a really hip nun.
I looked up how many ounces were in a pound, and 16 ounces is what I found. Then I stacked up pounds till they weighed a ton, and it took 2,000 until I was done.
All right, we are on to weight. Hopefully that video warmed you up. We are going to be trying to figure out from this box word bank with a desk, a ruler, a student, and a notebook, which one we would use ounces, pounds, grams, or kilograms for. So just like our length, we have the US version, which is we use ounces, and an ounce is about the weight of a strawberry. A pound is 16 ounces, and it's about the weight of a pineapple. And a ton is 2,000 pounds, or about a weight of a car. Then you come over here to the metric, which we went over at the beginning of the year because it works in base 10, meaning it's products, it's multiples of 10, so it's a little bit easier to convert, which is why we did it at the beginning of the year with base 10 in our place value fund. So that means a milligram is about the weight of 1 grain of salt. So let me get this straight, that 1 grain, so if you just take a little bit of salt, one of those grains is a milligram. Then a gram is 100 milligrams. So you would want to think of a weight of one of those sugar packets that you see when you go out to restaurants. Or see, Miss Brincell, we're in a quarantine, thanks so much. When we used to go out to restaurants, those little sugar packets that are on that table, one of those packets would be a gram, so still very, very, very small, but a lot bigger than a milligram because it's 1,000 milligrams. So 1,000 of those little salt particles all put together, which would be that packet. And then finally, a kilogram is 1,000 grams. So 1,000 milligrams is a gram, and 1,000 grams, so 1,000 sugar packets, or about the weight of 2 pineapples, or 2.2 pounds. So what you really want to make sure you know is over here, they are next to each other, right? They are the biggest in their kind of lane or in their block of this chart. But this is a weight of a cart, and this one's saying, or 2.2 pounds. You guys know 2 pineapples is not compared to a car. So just keep that in mind so you know that a kilogram is bigger than a milligram and a gram, but it is not compared to a ton just because they're next to each other. All right, so we're going to want to start thinking what could be in ounces, about the weight of a strawberry. Well, I'm going to say I'll use a notebook. Okay, I'm thinking of one of those Miss Brincell gave me, put in my back bin. How many ounces? You could think of a weight of a strawberry. How many? It might be, 10, 11. Think of almost like one of those boxes of strawberries you might get at the store. That would be equal, or maybe even a little more than my notebook. So that would make sense. Now for pounds. Okay, well, I've heard pounds before. I know that when I go to the doctor, they tell me how many pounds I am. So I think it would even make sense that it would be a student. So let's see. Yep, it's a student. So a student is how many pounds. Pounds of work to measure. Now grams, we're going back because that's pretty small. It was kind of a packet of sugar. So am I going to compare my desk? Imagine one, we need 2 people to lift those. To a packet of sugar? No, you wouldn't need 2 people to lift a packet of sugar. Do you need 2 people for my ruler? No, ruler's probably the better one. It's a lot lighter than my desk. So grams, okay. And then kilograms. That was when it's the weight of 2 pineapples, when that's about 2 pounds. So I mean, you could think maybe a box full of pineapples, like 10 or 12 pineapples, might be the same as my desk at school. So kilograms would work for that. So I'm going to put desk.
One gallon split into 4s is 4 quarts. Take that and divide by 2 and you got a pint. Split that pint up into halves and make a cup. And that cup will fit 8 fluid ounces inside of it.
1 gallon is 4 quarts.
Or 8 pints or 16 cups.
1 quart is 2 pints.
Or 4 cups or 32 fluid ounces.
1 pint is 2 cups.
Or 16 fluid ounces.
1 cup is 8 fluid ounces.
A gallon of milk split in 4s. Mix 4 quarts. Split a quart of milk in half. Then a pint is what you'll have. Which can make 2 cups you see often when you drink your school milk carton. You can drink the milk in 8 sips. Each is about an ounce going through your lips.
1 gallon is 4 quarts.
Or 8 pints or 16 cups.
1 quart is 2 pints.
Or 4 cups or 32 fluid ounces.
1 pint is 2 cups.
Or 16 fluid ounces.
1 cup is 8 fluid ounces.
Volume is a word that's familiar, and capacity and volume are similar. And though it's easy to assume, capacity is not exactly volume. Capacity is how much something you hold. The amount is always the same. Volume's the measure of what's inside, and that amount can change.
1 gallon is 4 quarts.
Or 8 pints or 16 cups.
1 quart is 2 pints.
Or 4 cups or 32 fluid ounces.
1 pint is 2 cups.
Or 16 fluid ounces.
1 cup is 8 fluid ounces.
All right, so for capacity measurement, you just saw the video, and we are going to be working with fluid ounces, cups, millimeters, and liters. So fluid ounces is going to be the amount a spoon can hold. A cup would be 8 of those, so 8 fluid ounces, or you kind of see that milk carton. A pint would be 2 cups. A quart is 2 pints or 4 cups, so 4 like smaller cartons that we get at lunch. And then a gallon is 4 quarts or 8 pints or 16 cups or 128 fluid ounces. So you're just getting bigger and larger, and this is what we use in the US. Over here you have metric, which is the one that's by base 10. So milliliter is about 10 drops from a dropper, an eyedropper. You may have used those in science before, but it's just those tiny little dots. And it's 10 of those, so it's very, very small. A liter would be about one of those that you get in those like small refrigerators when you check out at the store. So it's not the 2-liter bottle, which would be 2 of those. It's one of those smaller bottles of Coke that you would get. And then a kiloliter, is 1,000 liters, so it's about 4 bathtubs full. All right, so now our job is the same as last. We're going to be thinking, what is a water bottle, container of milk, glue bottle, or trash can? And we're going to fit those into these. So fluid ounces are our smallest one. So we're going to want to go after our smallest kind of item that would hold something. So would it be a water bottle, a container of milk, a glue bottle, or a trash can? And we're going to go with the water bottle. And often this example is used for fluid ounces just because on a water bottle, you're going to see the fluid ounces. It's not enough to be a liter. So fluid ounces at FLOZ, if you go grab one of your water bottles, you'll likely see this on it, and it will tell you how many fluid ounces are in your bottle. Now for cups, we're down to a container of milk, the glue bottle, or trash can. So I know for me, when you use milk, you'll kind of use cups of milk to cook. So I am going to go with the container of milk, and it's how many cups of it. And also why we're using container of milk is because that's kind of our sample from your lunch cartons, those like littler ones that you get your juices in. That's about a cup. Then for milliliters, remember that's our smallest one. It's about 10 droplets. So what you would want to use is the glue bottle. I can tell you for sure the trash can would take all day, maybe multiple days, to get how many milliliters go in a trash can. And then finally, the liters would be our best because it's our biggest measure of what goes in a trash can. All right.
Many types of tools are used for measuring, and many of these tools measure the same thing. Can you guess what it is? These are tools used to measure time. Some of them measure shorter periods of time, while others measure much longer periods of time. Specific units are used to describe different lengths of time. The second, minute, and hour are some of the smallest units of time. The time it takes you to blink your eyes is about 1 second. If you have a clock in your home that ticks, you can hear how quickly seconds pass. Each tick of the clock is 1 second. The second hand on a clock shows the seconds passing. Stopwatches and some other timers also count seconds. The minute is the next largest unit of time. 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. Although a minute is longer than a second, it is still a short period of time. You might be able to hold your breath for 1 minute, or hop on one foot for a minute. However, you would not be able to do these things for 1 hour. Just as there are 60 seconds in 1 minute, there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. Many things can be done in 1 hour. Cooking a meal, taking a bike ride, or mowing the lawn can take about an hour. Of course, some meals, bike rides, and lawns may take less than or greater than an hour to complete. What unit would be most appropriate to measure the amount of time it takes you to brush your teeth? The second, minute, or hour? Hopefully, you brush for more than a few seconds. Hours are too long. The minute is the best unit for measuring this amount of time. It should take you about 2 minutes to brush your teeth. What unit would be best for measuring the amount of time it takes to watch a movie? The hour is the best unit for this example. Most movies are about 2 hours long. Which unit is best for measuring the time it takes a basketball to go from a player's hands to the hoop? The second is the best unit of time to measure this brief action. Knowing how many seconds are in a minute or how many minutes are in an hour can help you compare amounts of time. For example, which is a greater amount of time, 70 seconds or 1 minute? Since 1 minute is 60 seconds, and 60 is less than 70, 70 seconds is the greater amount of time. Which of these is greater? 40 minutes or 1 hour? Knowing that 1 hour is 60 minutes and 60 is greater than 40, you can easily say that 1 hour is the greater amount of time. Two friends have a contest to see who can balance on 1 foot the longest. The first friend lasts 1 minute, and the second friend lasts 85 seconds. Who wins the contest? Since 1 minute is 60 seconds, and 60 is less than 85, the second friend balanced longer and is the winner. Time is an important part of everyday life, from brushing your teeth to completing chores or doing homework. Knowing how units of time relate to one another makes comparing them easier.
All right, so for today, we are going to have writing your name, reading in school, and the school day. So for seconds, would it be logical to say that in seconds is how quick you can write your name, how quick you are reading in school, or your school day? I know you sometimes might wish your school day is in seconds, but that one should be automatically out. Hopefully you are reading longer than 1 second. So we are going to go with writing your name. Next, for minutes, it's reading in school or your school day. Again, you might want our school day to be in minutes, but we know we have a longer amount of time. So reading in school could be the amount of time in minutes that we spend, and that would be our, 80 minutes or 90 minutes. And then finally, hours would be our school day. You wouldn't want to measure our school day in seconds. That might kind of scare you and overwhelm you. All right, so now we're kind of bringing together all the knowledge and hoping to find out which one to select, which will get you ready for today. So it says the weight of a pencil. Is it ounces, pounds, or kilograms? Now, kilograms, is large. It was about 2 pineapples. And a pencil's not going to be that big. Pounds, we were using that to weigh a student. So I'm going to go with ounces. Ounces, because a pencil's pretty light, I'm going to pick it up to write with. It's not that heavy. All right, next is the capacity of a water bottle of bubbles. Bubbles aren't heavy, so milliliters, cups, or liters. Well, a bubble, think of picking up a bubble. How heavy is a bubble? I'll go with milliliters, meaning very, very small. Those little droplets almost would make the most sense. The weight of a puppy, grams, is super, super, super small. Ounces is one of those that we use almost for like a baby. A baby's 9 pounds and 6 ounces. It's very lightweight. It's not even a pound. Or is a dog going to be measured kind of like a human in pounds? We're going to go with pounds because your dog typically can be like 20. Of course, it depends on if you have one of those big, big dogs that could be 100 pounds, but typically you're going to range it in, that like 20-40 zone of pounds. The length of a soccer field. Are you going to go out with your ruler with centimeters and measure it? Are you going to go with meters, which was kind of that size of like your doorknob to the floor, or kilometers? Which one will you use? Meters. And then finally, the length of time it takes to drive to school is going to be seconds, minutes, or hours. Hours would be way, way too far, way, way too long. Hopefully you're not driving hours. You would think Disneyland is an hour, 2 hours at best. So you're not going to be wanting going that far. Seconds, I know there are some of you who live directly across the street, but the most logical one for this would be...
Through the door, do you see 12 L's on the dance floor? What? 3 times 5 is 15. I'm a multiplication machine. Hey now, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, and 27, and
All right, so we finished up the Achieve articles in your packet. I know. Pat on your back, guys. Week 6. We have been in this for quite a while. So you have the option of selecting your own article, but then I also thought, well, wait. Some people don't have that internet access and the printing of it and all that type of stuff. So I'm kind of going back to what we were doing at the beginning in the way of I kind of show you it and then we can work through it together, and you can pause the video for the activity and write it on a separate sheet of paper. That type of technique will work totally fine. Or if you just want to do some extra reading, the real idea of this reading block is, of course, to get you thinking and reading. So don't stress out too much. We've done a lot of work with the Achieves doing 2 a week. So I kind of looked around and I found this really neat article called Schooled at a Skate Park. And I think especially right now, it's kind of difficult for all of us living through what we are and all the unknowns. And this article is about a group of young girls that are living through in a country of Afghanistan where there's war right outside their windows. And they've kind of found this outlet of skateboarding, and really the idea behind it is that skateboarding, of course, you're going to fall down, you're going to get injured, it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, but that you keep pushing through and you keep getting back up. So there was this really cool video that I actually am putting into our slides because I really loved it, and it kind of made me unable to click off the article and not share it with you and read it to you. And then I read it aloud, and that's really it for today. And then tomorrow I am going to go through and I will actually read through the questions just so it's a little more slowed down and you can work through them. Again, I would love it if you have that access on Achieve, to go on and read it and do the activity, because honestly, I think it's a really good reminder for all of us, because these girls before this whole pandemic and everything are just kind of fighting and living through each day. And not that it doesn't mean that we can't be sad or that it's not hard right now, but it's just kind of inspiring to see other people getting through tough things and working through it. So again, I obviously feel passionate about my little article I found, but you can select your own completely and kind of complete your goal this week and have that freedom. You're welcome. You finally get to pick your own. My only recommendation is, like it was in the beginning slides, is make sure it has an activity, because although I would love you to read all the articles, it does get a little disappointing if you read, annotate, and do all that stuff and realize that your article, doesn't have an activity with it, because there's some of those. So also go and look. There are fictional articles out. So whatever floats your boat, just go find something to
6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, and 27, and 30. Gotta keep, skip, counting by 3.
Current day Today we're on number 22 in your packet, and the prompt is, what quality or talent is most likely to make you famous one day? Chapter 15, The Forbidden Forest. Things could have been worse. Filch took them down to Professor McGonagall's study on the first floor, where they sat and waited without saying a word to each other. Hermione was trembling. Excuses, alibis, and wild cover-up stories chased each other around Harry's brain, each more feeble than the last. He couldn't see how they were going to get out of trouble this time. They were cornered. How could they have been so stupid as to forget the cloak? There was no reason on earth that Professor McGonagall would accept for them being out of their bed and creeping around the school in the dead of night, let alone being up the tallest astronomy tower, which was out of bounds except for classes. Add Norbert and the invisibility cloak, and they might as well be packing their bags already. Had Harry thought the things couldn't have been worse, he was wrong. When Professor McGonagall appeared, she was leading Neville. "Harry!" Neville burst out, the moment he saw the other two. "I was trying to find you to warn you. I heard Malfoy saying he was going to catch you. He said you had a Harry shook his head violently to shut Neville up, but Professor McGonagall had seized. She looked more likely to breathe fire than Norbert as she towered over the three of them. "I would never have believed it of any of you. Mr. Filch says you were up in the astronomy tower. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Explain yourselves." It was the first time Hermione had ever failed to answer a teacher's question. She was staring at her slippers, as still as a statue. "I think I've got a good idea of what's been going on," said Professor McGonagall. "It doesn't take a genius to work out. You fed Draco Malfoy some cock and bull story about a dragon trying to get him out of bed and into trouble. I've already caught him. I suppose you think it's funny that Longbottom heard the story and believed it too?" Harry caught Neville's eyes and tried to tell him without words that this wasn't true, because Neville was looking stunned and hurt. Poor blundering Neville. Harry knew what it must have cost him to try and find them in the dark, to warn them. "I'm disgusted," said Professor McGonagall. 4 students out of bed in one night. "I've never heard of such a thing before. You, Miss Granger, I thought you had more sense. As for you, Mr. Potter, I thought Gryffindor meant more to you than this. All 3 of you will receive detentions. Yes, you too, Mr. Longbottom. Nothing gives you the right to walk around school at night, especially these days. It's very dangerous, and 50 points will be taken from Gryffindor." 50? Harry gasped. "They would lose the lead he'd won in the last Quidditch match. 50 points each," said Professor McGonagall, breathing heavily through her long pointed nose. "Professor, please, you can't. Don't tell me what I can and can't do, Potter. Now get back to bed, all of you. I've never been more ashamed of Gryffindor." In one night, they'd ruin any chance Gryffindor had for the House Cup. Harry felt as though the bottom had dropped out of his stomach. How could they ever make up for this? Harry didn't sleep all night. He could hear Neville sobbing into his pillow for what seemed like hours. Harry couldn't think of anything to say to comfort him. He knew Neville, like himself, was dreading the dawn. What would happen when the rest of Gryffindor found out what they'd done? At first, Gryffindor's passing the giant hourglass that recorded the house points the next day thought there'd been a mistake. How could they suddenly have 150 points fewer than yesterday? And then the story started to spread. Harry Potter, the famous Harry Potter, their hero of 2 Quidditch matches, had lost them all those points. Him and a couple of other stupid first years. From being one of the most popular and admired people at school, Harry was suddenly the most hated. Even Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs turned on him, because everyone had been longing to see Slytherin lose the House Cup. Everywhere Harry went, people pointed and didn't trouble to lower their voices as they insulted him. Slytherins, on the other hand, clapped as he walked past, whistling and cheering. "Thanks, Potter! We owe you one." Only Ron stood by him. "They'll all forget this in a few weeks. Fred and George have lost loads of points in all the time they've been here, and people still like them. They've never lost 150 points in one go." "No," Ron admitted. It was a bit late to repair the damage, but Harry swore to himself not to meddle in things that weren't his business. From now on, it was sneaking around and spying. He felt so ashamed of himself that he went to Wood and offered to resign from the Quidditch team. Resign? Wood thundered. What good did that do? How are we going to get any points back if we can't win at Quidditch? But even Quidditch had lost its fun. The rest of the team wouldn't speak to Harry during practice, and if they had to speak about him, they called him the Seeker. Hermione and Neville were suffering too. They didn't have as bad as a time as Harry, because they weren't as well known, but nobody would speak to them either. Hermione had stopped drawing attention to herself in class, keeping her head down and working in silence. Harry was almost glad that the exams weren't far away. All the studying he had to do kept his mind off his misery. He, Ron, and Hermione kept to themselves, working late into the night trying to remember the ingredients in complicated potion, learn charms and spells by heart, memorize the dates of magical discoveries and goblin rebellions. Then, about a week before the exams were due to start, Harry's new resolution not to interfere in anything that didn't concern him was put to an unexpected test. Walking back from the library on his own, one afternoon he heard somebody whimpering from a classroom up ahead. As he drew closer, he heard Quirrell's voice. No, not again, please. It sounded as though someone was threatening him. Harry moved closer. All right, he heard Quirrell sob. Next second, Quirrell came hurrying out of the classroom, straightening his turban. He was pale and looked as though he was about to cry. He strode out of sight. Harry didn't think Quirrell had even noticed him. He waited until Quirrell's footsteps had disappeared, then peered into the classroom. It was empty, but a door stood ajar at the other end. Harry was halfway toward it before he remembered what he'd promised himself about not. All the same, he'd have gambled 12 Sorcerer's Stones that Snape had just left the room. And from what Harry had just heard, Snape would be walking with a new spring in his step. Quirrell seemed to have given in at last. Harry went back to the library where Hermione was testing Ron on astronomy. Harry told them what he'd heard. Snape's done it, then, said Ron. If Quirrell told him how to break his anti-dark force spell. There's still Fluffy, though, said Hermione. Maybe Snape found out how to get past him without asking Hagrid, said Ron, looking up at the thousands of books surrounding them. I bet there's a book somewhere in here telling you how to get past a giant three-headed dog. So, what do we do, Harry? The light of adventure was kindling again in Ron's eyes, but Hermione answered before Harry could. Go to Dumbledore. That's what we should have done ages ago. If we were trying anything ourselves, we'd be thrown out for sure. But we've got no proof, said Harry. Quirrell's too scared to back us up. Snake's only got to say he doesn't know how the troll got in at Halloween, and that he was nowhere near the third floor. What do you think they'll believe? Him or us? It's not exactly a secret we hate him. Dumbledore will think we made it up to get him sacked. Filch wouldn't help us if his life depended on it. He's too friendly with Snape. And the more students get thrown out, the better, he'll think. And don't forget, we're not supposed to know about the stone or Fluffy. That'll take a lot of explaining. Hermione looked convinced, but Ron didn't. If we just do a bit poking around, no, said Harry flatly. We've done enough poking around. He pulled a map of Jupiter toward him and started to learn the names of its moons. The following morning notes were delivered to Harry, Hermione, and Neville at the breakfast table. They were all the same. Your detention will take place at 11 o'clock tonight. Meet Mr. Filch in the entrance hall. Professor McGonagall. Harry had forgotten they still had detentions to do in the furor of the points they'd lost. He'd half expected Hermione to complain that this was a whole night of studying lost. But she didn't say a word. Like Harry, she felt they deserved what they got. At 11 o'clock that night, they said goodbye to Ron in the common room and went down to the entrance hall with Neville. Filch was already there, and so was Malfoy. Harry had forgotten that Malfoy had got a detention too. Follow me, said Filch, lighting a lamp and leading them outside. I bet you'll think twice about breaking a school rule again, won't you? He said, leering at them. Oh, yes. Hard work and pain are the best teachers, if you ask me. It's just a pity they'll let the old punishments die out. Hang you by your wrists from the ceiling for a few days. I've got the chains still in my office. Keep 'em well oiled up in case they ever need 'em. Right off we go, and don't think of running off now. It'll be worse for you if you do. They marched off across the dark grounds. Neville kept sniffing. Harry wondered what their punishment was going to be. It must be something really horrible, or Filch wouldn't be sounding so delighted. The moon was bright, but clouds scudded across. It kept throwing them into darkness. Ahead, Harry could see the lighted windows of Hagrid's hut. Then they heard a distant shout. "Is that you, Filch? Hurry up. I want to get started." Harry's heart rose. If they were going to be working with Hagrid, it wouldn't be so bad. His relief must have showed in his face because Filch said, "I suppose you think you'll be enjoying yourself with the oaf." "Well, think again, boy. It's into the forest you're going, and I'm much mistaken if you all come out in one piece." At this, Neville let out a little moan, and Malfoy stopped dead in his tracks. "The forest?" he repeated, and he didn't sound quite as cool as usual. "We can't go in there at night. There's all sorts of things in there. Werewolves, I heard." Neville clutched the sleeve of Harry's robe and made a choking noise. "That's your problem, isn't it?" said Filch, his voice cracking with glee. "Should have thought of them werewolves before you got in trouble, shouldn't you?" Hagrid came striding toward them out of the dark, Fang at his heel. He was carrying his large crossbow, and a quiver of arrows hung over his shoulder. "About time," he said. "I've been waiting for you half an hour already." "All right, Harry. Hermione?" "I shouldn't be too friendly to them, Hagrid," said Filch coldly. "They're here to be punished after all." "That's why you're late, is it?" said Hagrid, frowning at Filch. "Been lecturing 'em, eh? It's not your place to do that. You done your bit. I'll take over from here." "I'll be back at dawn," said Filch, "for what's left of 'em," he added nastily, and he turned and started back toward the castle, his lamp bobbing away in the darkness. Malfoy now turned to Hagrid. "I'm not going in that forest," he said, and Harry was pleased to hear the note of panic in his voice. "Ya are if you want to stay at Hogwarts," said Hagrid, fiercely. "You done wrong now. You gotta pay for it. But this is servant stuff. It's not for students to do. I thought that would be copying lines or something. If my father knew I was doing this, he'd tell you. That's how it is at Hogwarts," Hagrid growled. "Copying lines? What's good to anyone? You do something useful or you get out. If you think your father rather you were expelled, then go back to the castle and pack. Go on." Malfoy didn't move. He looked at Hagrid furiously, but then dropped his gaze. "Right then," said Hagrid. "Now listen carefully, because it's dangerous what we're going to do tonight, and I don't want none of you taking risks. Follow me over here a moment." He led them to the very edge of the forest, holding up his lamp up high. He pointed down a narrow, winding earth track that disappeared into the thick black trees. A light breeze lifted their hair as they looked into the forest. "Look there," said Hagrid. "See that stuff shining on the ground, silvery stuff? That's unicorn blood. There's a unicorn in there been hurt badly by something. This is the second time in a week. I found one dead last week. We're going to try to find the poor thing. We might have to put it out of its misery." "And what if whatever hurt the unicorn finds us first?" said Malfoy, unable to keep the fear out of his voice. "There's nothing that lives in the forest that can hurt you, if you're with me or Fang," said Hagrid. "And keep the path. Right now, we're going to split into two parties and follow the trail in different directions. There's blood all over the place. It must have been staggering around since last night at least." "I want Fang," said Malfoy quickly, looking at Fang's long teeth. "All right, but I warn you, he's a coward," said Hagrid. "So me and Harry and Hermione go one way, and Draco, Neville, and Fang go the other. Now, if anyone finds a unicorn, we'll send up a green spark, right? Get your wands out and practice now. That's it. And if anyone gets in trouble, send up a red spark, and we'll all come find you. So be careful. Let's go." The forest was black and silent. A little way into, they reached the fork in the earth path, and Harry and Hermione and Hagrid took the left path, while Malfoy, Neville, and Fang took the right. They walked in silence, their eyes on the ground. Every now and then a ray of moonlight through the branches above lit a spot of silver-blue blood on the fallen leaves. Harry saw that Hagrid looked very worried. "Could a werewolf be killing the unicorns?" Harry asked. "Not fast enough," said Hagrid. "It's not easy to catch a unicorn. They're powerful magical creatures. I never knew one to be hurt before." They walked past a mossy tree stump. Harry could hear running water. There must be a stream somewhere close by. There were still spots of unicorn blood here, and there's always a winding path. "You all right, Hermione?" Hagrid whispered. "Don't worry. It can't have gone far if it's badly hurt. And then we'll all be able to get behind that tree." Hagrid seized Harry and Hermione and hoisted them off the path behind a towering oak. He pulled out an arrow and fitted it in his crossbow, raising it ready to fire. The three of them listened. Something was slithering over dead leaves nearby. It sounded like a cloak trailing along the ground. Hagrid was squinting up the dark path, but after a few seconds the sound faded away. "I knew it," he murmured. "There's something in here that shouldn't be." A werewolf? Harry suggested. There was no werewolf, and it wasn't no unicorn either, said Harry grandly. Right, follow, but careful now. They walked more slowly, ears straining for the faintest sound. Suddenly, in a clearing ahead, something definitely moved. Who's there? Hagrid called. Show yourself, I'm armed. And into the clearing came what is it, a man or a horse? To the waist, a man, with red hair and a beard. But below, that was a horse gleaming chestnut body with a long reddish tail. Harry and Hermione's jaws dropped. Oh, it's you, Rowan, said Hagrid in relief. How are ya? He walked forward and shook the Centaur's hand. Good evening to you, Hagrid, said Ronan. He had a deep, sorrowful voice. Were you going to shoot me? Can't be too careful, Ronan, said Hagrid, patting his crossbow. There's something bad on the loose in this forest. This is Harry Potter and Hermione Granger, by the way. Students up at the school. And this is Ronan, you two. He's a Centaur. We noticed, said Hermione faintly. Good evening, said Ronan. Students, are you? And do you learn much up at that school? A bit, said Hermione timidly. A bit? Well, that's something, Ronan sighed. He flung back his head and stared at the sky. Mars is bright tonight. Yeah, said Hagrid, glancing up too. Listen, I'm glad we've run into you, Ronan, because there's a unicorn been hurt. You seen anything? Ronan didn't answer immediately. He stared unblinkingly upward, then the sign. Always the innocent are the first victims. He said, so it has been for ages past. So it is now. Yeah, said Hagrid, but you haven't seen anything, Ronan. Anything unusual? Mars is bright tonight, Ronan repeated, while Hagrid watched him impatiently. Unusually bright. Yeah, but I was meaning anything unusual a bit nearer home, said Hagrid. So you haven't noticed anything strange. Yet again, Ronan took a while to answer. At last he said, the forest hides many secrets. A movement in the trees behind Ronan made Hagrid raise his bow again. But it was just one, only a second Centaur, black-haired and bodied, wilder looking than Ronan. Who'll obey? Said Hagrid. All right. Good evening, Hagrid. I hope you are all well. Well enough. Look, I've just been asking Ronan you seen anything odd in here lately. There's a unicorn been injured. Would you know anything about it? Bane walked over and stand next to Ronan. He looked skyward. Mars is bright tonight, he said simply. We've heard, said Hagrid grumpily. Well, if either of you do see anything, let me know, won't you? We'll be off then. Harry and Hermione followed him out of the clearing, staring over their shoulders at Ronan and Bane, and the trees blocked their view. Never, said Hagrid irritably, trying to get a straight answer out of a Centaur. Rudy stargazers. Not interested in anything closer. The moon. Are there many of them in here? Asked Hermione. Oh, fair few. Keep themselves to themselves mostly, but they're good enough about turning up if ever I want a word. They're deep mind Centaurs. They know things, just don't let on much. Do you think that was a Centaur we heard earlier? Said Harry. Did that sound like hooves to you? Nah. If you ask me, that was what's been killing the unicorns. Never heard anything like it before. They walked on through the dense, dark trees. Harry kept looking nervously over his shoulders. He had the nasty feeling. They're being watched. He was very glad they had Hagrid and his crossbow with them. They had just passed a bend in the path when Hermione grabbed Hagrid's arm. Hagrid, look! Red sparks! The others are in trouble. You two wait here, Hagrid shouted. Stay on the path. I'll come back for you. They heard him crashing away through the undergrowth and stood looking at each other very scared until they couldn't hear anything but the rustling of leaves around them. You don't think they've been hurt, do you? Whispered Hermione. I don't care if Malfoy has, but if something's got Neville, it's our fault he's here in the first place. The minutes dragged by. Their ears seemed sharper than usual. Harry seemed to be picking up every sigh of the wind, every cracking twig. What was going on? Where were the others? At last, a great crunching noise announced Hagrid's return. Malfoy, Neville, and Fang were there with him. Hagrid was fuming. Malfoy, it seemed, had sneaked up behind Neville and grabbed him as a joke. Neville had panicked and set up the sparks. We'll be lucky to catch anything now with the racket you two were making. Right, we're changing groups. Neville, you stay with me and Hermione. Harry, you go with Fang, this idiot. I'm sorry, Hagrid added in a whisper to Harry, but he'll have a harder time frightening you. And we've got to get this done. So Harry set off into the heart of the forest with Malfoy and Fang. They walked for nearly half an hour, deeper and deeper into the forest, until the path became almost impossible to follow. because the trees were so thick. Harry thought the blood seemed to be getting thicker. There were splashes on the roots of a tree, as though the poor creature had been thrashing around in pain close by. Harry could see a clearing ahead, through the tangled branches of an ancient oak. "Look," he murmured, holding out his arm to stop Malfoy. Something bright white was gleaming on the ground. They inched closer. It was the unicorn, all right, and it was dead. Harry had never seen anything so beautiful and sad. Its long, slender legs were stuck out at odd angles where it had fallen, and its mane was spread pearly white on the dark leaves. Harry had taken one step toward it when a slithering sound made him freeze where he stood. A bush on the edge of the clearing quivered. Then out of the shadows a hooded figure came crawling across the ground like some stalking beast. Harry, Malfoy, and Fang stood transfixed. The cloaked figure reached the unicorn, lowered its head over the wound in the animal's side, and began to drink its blood. "Arg!" Malfoy let out a terrible scream and bolted. So did Fang. The hooded figure raised its head and looked right at Harry. Unicorn blood was dribbling down its front. It got to its feet and came swiftly towards Harry. He couldn't move for fear. Then a panic like he'd never felt before pierced his head. It was as though his scar was on fire. Half blinded, he staggered backward. He heard hooves behind him, galloping. And something jumped clean over Harry, charging at the figure. The pain in Harry's head was so bad he fell to his knees. It took a minute or two to pass. When he looked up, the figure had gone. A centaur was standing over him, not Ronan or Bane. This one looked younger. He had white blonde hair and a palomino body. "Are you all right?" said the centaur, pulling Harry to his feet. "Yes, thank you. What was that?" The centaur didn't answer. He was astonishing. Blue eyes were like pale sapphires. He looked careful at Harry, his eyes lingering on the scar that stood out, livid on Harry's forehead. "You are the Potter boy," he said. "You had better get back to Hagrid. The forest is not safe at this time, especially for you. Can you ride? It will be quicker this way. My name is Firenze," he added, as he lowered himself onto his front legs, so that Harry could clamber on his back. There was suddenly a sound of more galloping from the other side of the clearing. Ronan and Bane came bursting through the trees, their flanks heaving and sweaty. "Firenze!" Bane thundered. "What are you doing? You have a human on your back. Have you no shame? Are you a common mule? Do you realize who this is?" said Firenze. "This is the Potter boy. The quicker he leaves this forest, the better." "What have you been telling him?" growled Bane. "Remember, Firenze, we are sworn not to set ourselves against the heavens. Have we not read what is to come in the movements of the planets?" Rowan pawed the ground furiously. "I'm sure Firenze thought he was acting for the best," he said in his gloomy voice. Bane kicked his back leg in anger. "For the best? What has that to do with this?" "Centaurs are concerned with what has been foretold. It is not our business to run around like donkeys after stray humans in our forest." Firenze suddenly reared on to his hind legs in anger, so that Harry had to grab his shoulders to stay on. "Do you not see that unicorn?" Firenze bellowed at Bane. "Do you not understand why it was killed? Or have the plants not let you in on the secret? I set myself against what is lurking in this forest. Bane, yes, with human alongside me if I must." And Firenze whisked around with Harry clutching on as best he could. They plunged into the trees, leaving Ronan and Bane behind him. Harry didn't have a clue what was going on. "Why is Bane so angry?" he asked. "What was that thing you saved me from anyways?" Firenze slowed to a walk, warned Harry to keep his head bowed in case a low-hanging branch, but did not answer Harry's question. They made their way through the trees in silence for so long that Harry thought Firenze did not want to talk to him anymore. They were passing through a particular dense patch of trees, however, when Firenze suddenly stopped. "Harry Potter, do you know what unicorn blood is used for?" "No," said Harry, startled by the odd question. "We've only used the horn and tail hair in potions. This is because it is a monstrous thing to slay a unicorn," said Firenze. "Only one who has nothing to lose and everything to gain would commit such a crime. The blood of a unicorn will keep you alive, even if you were an inch from death, but at terrible price. You have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself. You will have but a half-life, a cursed life, from the moment the blood touches your lips." Harry stared at the back of Firenze's head, which was dappled silver in the moonlight. But who'd be that desperate? He wondered aloud. If you're going to be cursed forever, death's better, isn't it? It is, Firenees agreed. Unless all you need is to stay alive long enough to drink something else. Something that will bring you back to full strength and power. Something that will mean you can never die. Mr. Potter, do you know what is hidden in the school at this very moment? The Sorcerer's Stone, of course. The elixir of life. But I don't understand who. Can you think of nobody who has waited many years to return to power, who has clung to life, awaited their chance? It was as though an iron fist had clenched suddenly around Harry's heart. Over the rustling of the trees he seemed to hear once more what Hagrid had told him on the night they had met. Some say he died. Codswallop, in my opinion. Don't know if he had enough human left in him to die. Do you mean, Harry croaked, that was Harry, are you all right? Hermione was running toward them down the path, Hagrid puffing along behind her. I'm fine, said Harry, hardly knowing what he was saying. The unicorn's dead, Hagrid. It's in the clearing back there. This is where I leave you, Firenees murmured, as Hagrid hurried off to examine the unicorn. You are safe now. Harry slid off his back. Good luck, Harry Potter, said Firenees. The planets have been read wrongly before now, even by centaurs. I hope this is one of those times. He turned and cantered back into the depths of the forest, leaving Harry shivering behind him. Ron had fallen asleep in the dark common room, waiting for them to return. He shouted something about Quidditch fouls when Harry roughly shook him awake. In a matter of seconds, though, he was wide awake as Harry began to tell him and Hermione what had happened in the forest. Harry couldn't sit down. He paced up and down in front of the fire. He was still shaking. Snape wants the stone for Voldemort, and Voldemort's waiting in the forest. And all this time, we thought Snape just wanted to get rich. Stop saying the name, said Ron in a terrified whisper, as if he thought Voldemort could hear. Harry wasn't listening. Firenees saved me, but he shouldn't have done so. Bane was furious. He was talking about interfering with what the planets say is going to happen. They must show that Voldemort's coming back. Bane thinks Firenees should have let Voldemort kill me. I suppose that's written in the stars as well. Will you stop saying the name, Ron hissed. So all I've got to do is wait for now is Snape to steal the stone. Harry went on feverishly. Then Voldemort will be able to come and finish me off. Well, I suppose Bane will be happy. Hermione looked very frightened, but she had a word of comfort. Harry, everyone says Dumbledore, the only one you know who, was ever afraid of. With Dumbledore around, you know who won't touch you. Anyways, who says the centaurs are right? It sounds like fortune-telling to me. And Professor McGonagall says that's a very imprecise branch of magic. The sky had turned light before they stopped talking. They went to bed exhausted, their throats sore, but the night's surprises weren't over. When Harry pulled back his sheets, he found his invisibility cloak folded neatly underneath them. There was a note pinned to it, just in case.